It is now my honor to introduce our guest speaker today. Our guest speaker is Commissioner Kennedy, representing the CA Citizens Redistricting Commission. That's hard to say on only one cup of coffee. So, Commissioner Kennedy, good morning to you. Take us away.
Good morning. Thank you, Mike. Thank you to the Chamber for inviting me to make this presentation. We've actually been making these presentations for several months now. We've made over 100 of them to groups and communities around the state, but it's a real pleasure to be here with you this morning. Let me get my, I need to share screen first, and then we go to the presentation. There we go. Okay, we are off and running. So, Ray Kennedy, I was one of the individuals chosen at random last July to be on this commission. I've spent 30 years plus in the field of international electoral assistance, the last 20 years of that working in the United Nations system. But it's a real thrill to be finally doing the work that I love closer to home. This redistricting basics presentation will go over who and what the commission is, what we do, and how you and your families, friends, and colleagues can get involved in the process. One reminder, California government code prohibits us from receiving input about district lines in these events. These are intended to be one-way educational events. I can answer questions about the presentation or very basic questions about redistricting, but I cannot take any input on the actual line drawing. If you do want to provide input, please head to our website, wedrawthelines.ca.org, and look around there. There will be various ways that you can provide input to us. We'll go over some of those later in the presentation. So what is redistricting and why do we redraw district maps? Well, very simply, communities change over the course of 10 years. They change in their priorities, their interests. People are born, people die, people move in, people move out. So areas where there were once roughly the same number of people become unequal. Why is redistricting important? Why should you be involved? Well, very simply, one of the greatest powers that the people of California have is to elect their own representatives to conduct the business of their government. Redistricting, unfortunately, has been used at some point in some places to exclude community from political power. In fact, in most other states, it's the politicians redrawing the districts, and they often end up drawing safe districts to ensure that they stay in office no matter what the voters might want. Our hope is that by participating in the redistricting process, more communities in California will have the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. Now, the road to fair representation has several steps. First of all, of course, is the census. Every 10 years, the entire US population is counted. That data is used to draw new maps to account for population shifts across the states and across districts within states. Reapportionment is the next step. You might recall that about 7 or 8 weeks ago, 26th of April, the Census Bureau announced census results. Well, those were the reapportionment results. That gave us the total population of the entire country as well as the total population of each state. That allowed for the calculations to be made to see what states would have how many seats in the US House of Representatives. California, of course, will revert to the 52 seats that the state had after the 1990 census, due not to a decline in the population, but just the fact that the state did not grow as fast as some other states. We're still waiting for the actual redistricting data. That's the data all the way down to the census block level that will enable us to draw new boundaries to determine which voters are represented by each electoral district. We'll talk a little bit more about the timeline later in the presentation. Once we get that, we will be drawing boundaries for new U.S. House of Representatives, State Senate, State Assembly, and State Board of Equalization districts. There are, as I said, 52 U.S. House of Representatives districts to be drawn, 40 State Senate districts, 80 State Assembly districts, and 4 Board of Equalization districts. That's 176 maps that we get to draw. How do we do it? Well, the California State Constitution sets these criteria for us. And it also says that we have to follow them in this order when we're drawing the maps. First, districts must be of nearly equal population to comply with US Constitution and Supreme Court decisions based on the Constitution. Second, districts must comply with the Voting Rights Act to ensure that minorities have a fair opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. Third, districts must be drawn contiguously so that all parts of the district are connected to each other. Fourth, and this is kind of the heart of the matter, districts must minimize the division of counties, cities, neighborhoods, and communities of interest to the extent possible. One thing to note on this is that within criterion 4, there is no ranking of these 4 types of geographical areas. So if we get into a situation where we have a choice between dividing a city and dividing a community of interest, that's up to us. That's not determined by the state constitution. State constitution tells us that those elements, counties, cities, neighborhoods, and communities of interest, are less important than the equal population criterion, the Voting Rights Act criterion, and the contiguity criterion, but more important than the compactness criterion and the nesting criterion. Number 5, districts should be geographically compact so that if we're building a district and we need to add population, we should be looking as close by as possible, respecting the previous criteria 1, 2, 3, and 4 before we go farther out. So that's what the geographically compact criterion says, basically, in the state constitution. And finally, number 6, where practicable, and we're talking about, having already met criteria 1 through 5, where practicable, each state Senate district should consist of 2 complete and adjacent assembly districts, and each state Board of Equalization district should consist of 10 complete and adjacent state Senate districts. In addition, the Constitution tells us that the place of residence of any incumbent or political candidate may not be considered in the creation of a map, and districts may not be drawn for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against any incumbent, any political candidate, or any political party. Now, communities of interest. These are important, part of criterion 4, but people want to know, what are communities of interest? So we're defining a community of interest as a concentrated population that shares common social and economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. So just a couple of examples, and these are only examples. There are cultural communities of interest. There are communities of interest in which people share similar living standards or have similar work opportunities. Community of interest could be an area in which people have access to the same transportation facilities or access to the same media. And hopefully, just contemplating these various examples, you can see that someone could actually belong to multiple communities of interest. They could belong to a cultural community of interest at the same time as they belong to a community of interest around transportation facilities, for example. We also recognize that people could belong to different communities of interest depending on whether we're talking about, say, the U.S. House of Representatives on one hand and the State Assembly on the other. there are issues that come up in the US House of Representatives that don't come up or are much less important in the state assembly, and vice versa. So people's communities of interest can vary depending on that. There was a discussion in 2011 when I attended the 2010 Commission's hearing in Palm Springs over representation of the Salton Sea area. Salton Sea, is a concern, but at both state and federal levels. But the discussion was around how many seats in the U.S. House of Representatives do we want representing the Salton Sea area, given the importance of federal assistance in resolving issues surrounding the environment of the Salton Sea. So those are just a couple of things to keep in mind. One other is that communities of interest are not the same as districts. Districts are not communities of interest. Communities of interest are not districts, but communities of interest are the key building blocks that we'll be using along with census blocks as we build the new districts. So how do you define your community of interest? Well, stories telling us about your community of interest, and eventually we need to see a map. Now, I don't want anyone to feel that they can't contribute to the process because they're uncomfortable drawing a map or don't know how to use any of the online tools for drawing a map. So in those cases, if you just tell us what the borders of your community are, we'll find somebody to draw the map. Don't let that be a barrier to you. We are starting actually later today with our first communities of interest input sessions. That will be from noon to 8 p.m. virtually. Instructions for joining are on our website. We anticipate hearing personal stories, oral testimony from folks, and that's always a powerful element. Folks can also submit communities of interest input in writing. Tell us about your community. Tell us what makes it a community. Communities often get involved in redistricting because they feel their issues have not been adequately addressed by their elected representatives. And again, we like to have maps. We'll be looking at a lot of maps over the next few months, but please don't let that be a barrier to you. We also want people to be aware that there are different redistricting efforts going on. As I mentioned, we have 176 maps to draw as it is with U.S. House of Representatives, State Senate, State Assembly, and State Board of Equalization. So we are not involved in County Board of Supervisors redistricting. We're not involved in any municipal redistricting, any school district redistricting, any water district or community college district redistricting. All of those are responsibility of other bodies. Now, if somebody shows up at one of our input sessions and wants to talk about their city council districts, we'll try to refer them to the correct folks to provide that input. And likewise, if someone shows up at a County Board of Supervisors redistricting session and wants to talk about their state assembly district, we're hoping that the County Board of Supervisors folks will send them our way. But just help people be aware that there are these different efforts and that we have responsibility for House of Representatives, State Senate, State Assembly, and State Board of Equalization. Just a bit of history. Prior to 2010, it was California state legislators who drew the lines. And if they didn't do it in time or they were found to have done it wrong, the courts ended up stepping in. In 2008, Proposition 11 was passed by the voters, establishing the commission and giving it responsibility for drawing new lines for State Senate, State Assembly, and State Board of Equalization. That passed fairly easily, as I recall. And in 2010, Proposition 20 was on the ballot. It passed, and that added a mandate to the commission's responsibility to draw the congressional districts. So California has had two commissions, the 2010 Commission which did its work in 2011, had their final meeting in June of last year. The 2020 commission took office beginning in July of last year, will be in office until the 2030 commission takes office. California was not the first state to have an independent redistricting commission. Arizona was. But since California set up its redistricting commission in 2008, with the establishment of the 2010 commission, Colorado, Idaho, Michigan, Montana, Washington, and others are now moving to use independent commissions to draw their lines. Who we are? Well, after an extended application and selection process that attracted more than 20,000 applicants, the first 8 members of the commission, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and 2 others, were chosen in random draws from a pool of 36 finalists in July of last year. We then sat down, reviewed the applications of the remaining candidates in the 3 subpools, and agreed on the final 6 members. By law, that was 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 2 others the following month. So as of August of last year, there were 14 of us. We are as diverse in geography as we are in opinions and expertise. There are 7 from Northern California, 7 from Southern California, 8 women, 6 men. We range in ages from our 30s to our 60s. There are NGO leaders, engineers, pastors, law enforcement officers, political scientists, public servants, and a lawyer. We're Californians. Our meetings are held online for now. Everyone is welcome to join us through the link on our website. As I mentioned, we've made over 100 of these presentations so far to groups and communities around the state. The presentation is also available in video form on our YouTube channel or our website. If anyone belongs to another group that would like to get this presentation, we're in the process of actually sunsetting the in-person presentation so that we can focus on the communities of interest input sessions, but you will continue to be able to get the presentation on video on our YouTube channel or our website. I mentioned that the communities of interest input sessions begin today. There will be another one with a statewide focus on Saturday the 19th, after which we're going to shift gears and go into communities of interest input events focusing on specific parts of the state. So we are part of Zone I, San Bernardino and Riverside counties. The first communities of interest input session focusing specifically on San Bernardino and Riverside counties will be Thursday, June 24th. People can also submit input using our brand new communities of interest mapping tool, drawmycacommunity.org. We've had about getting close to 300 submissions so far through that new online tool. We will also be making available a paper-based version of that tool with prepaid postage. We hope to get that into local libraries and other locations around the state soon. Again, our website, wedrawthelinesca.org. We'll have instructions on providing input. Folks can send written input to us at votersfirstact@crc.ca.gov. If they want, they can call us. Our main number in Sacramento is 916-323-0323, or pop it in an envelope and mail it to us at 721 Capitol Mall, Suite 260, Sacramento, California, 95814. All of your input will help the commission determine the boundaries of your communities and your districts. Language access is important to the commissioners. we've taken steps to ensure that as many Californians as possible will be able to participate in the process so that language is not a barrier. We have translated our flyer, our fact sheet, our frequently asked questions, as well as this presentation into Spanish, simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, Vietnamese, Tagalog, Korean, Armenian, Farsi, Arabic, Russian, Japanese, Punjabi, and Khmer. We're happy to arrange for interpretation of public comment sections during our business meetings with 5 days notice. Any input that we get in any format, any language will be translated for the commissioners. And if someone needs an interpreter to participate in the communities of interest input sessions, we ask that you notify us 5 business days prior to the event. We'll seek to contract an interpreter in the requested language. Now, COVID has delayed many things, including the census data that we need to draw the district maps. The state constitution establishes an August 15th deadline for us to submit new maps. But in February, the Census Bureau announced that it would release redistricting data on September 30th. They later announced that they would release data in an older format in mid to late August. Fortunately for us, last year, the state legislature filed suit in the California Supreme Court to compel the Secretary of State to accept maps from us after that August 15th deadline. And so on July 17th of last year, the California Supreme Court ruled that the commission should have until December 15th of this year to submit its final maps to the Secretary of State. This was assuming that the state would receive the redistricting data by July 31st. The Supreme Court also ruled that if the census results are received by the state after July 31st, the commission's deadline would be adjusted on a day-for-day basis to account for that additional delay. We are aware of the elections coming up in 2022. We're working to minimize the impact of the delay on that, but the fact is to draw 176 maps will take some time. So we will continue to monitor the Census Bureau's announcements, and we will continue to keep the people of California updated. Just a reminder, no public input on line drawing today. If you'd like to provide input, please go to our website or to the drawmycacommunity.org online tool. Again, this is our contact information, including our social media accounts at We Draw the Lines CA. Thank you very much. And as I said, I'm happy to answer questions about the presentation, but not take any input on actual line drawing.
Well said, Commissioner Kennedy. In a fascinating presentation, it's inspiring to see the steps that are taken in the interest of fairness and equal representation. So I salute you and your team. Heather, do we have any questions from the chat? This is also a reminder too, as Heather is combing through those, that if you have questions for Commissioner Kennedy, that you can drop them in the chat box and Heather will ask them on your behalf. Heather?
I'm not showing any questions in the chat at this time.
Awesome, Heather. Thank you so. And I want to remind everybody that if you do have any insight on the lines, to visit the links that were dropped in the chat box there, or to visit the website. I am once again inspired by the accessibility as well as the passion for an equal representation. I think that's very, very, very important. So again, Commissioner Kennedy, thank you so much for your presentation and your time this morning. And I very much, I just want to say thank you. And if anyone would like to contact him, please feel free to go through the appropriate channels. Thank you so much.